representing us for millions of dollars. But let me ask you this. You had a guy come up to you and saying, hey, look, I'll give you $2 million. All you have to do is vote yes on this thing on Tuesday and then not even think about it again. And you're set. You can take care of your family forever.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, if I was in their position, I'd do very similar things.
That's what we're talking
The only reason I would not do
That's what we're talking
the
about.
only reason I would exactly not do that is if it's going to alienate my base and that I know that it could bite me in the butt later in the future if I decide to commit
Nick.
to it. But you have to be extremely savvy in a position like politics or even in places of business or other fields like medicine and law.
Okay, let me bring it. So let's pretend you're a medical doctor, okay, and you're in charge of making sure that your hospital is profitable. Are you willing to sort of short shift the poorer patients in order to give the care that's available to the richer patients, so that you can have higher profit lines, because they're obviously going to pay more for the same services. Mm-hmm. They're going to pay more for, they're going to be your high clientele. So are you going to, in some cases, deny care to the poor people because it's less profitable?
I'd put it like this. I would say if I was outside of the U.S. or a lot of the developed nations,
mm-hmm.
then if I was in the developed nation, I would say absolutely no.
Right.
Because in something like the medical field, one mess up that could actually kill or seriously maim or torment somebody, you're going to have some massive legal repercussions,
mm-hmm.
and that your license or whatever occupation you're in, it's going to get revoked. Easy as that. I know people who are in the medical
mm-hmm.
field that have to worry about this. Heck, they have to record every single little detail.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, they're going to get reprimanded heavily for it.
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't, and they basically spend their whole life to build this kind of reputation to do it. Now, if it was outside and maybe hopefully in a different field, then yes, it would be possible, because poor people are dime a dozen in the developing world. They're everywhere.
Yeah.
Versus the rich, because if you're with the rich, you can always be hooked up with them and you'll be set for life. But in places like the Western world, the poor people, they're more equal compared to the rest of society in general. And also they have the influence of social media, so it's very easy for them to develop a base or sentiment against that company.
I would push back on that a little bit. I think you're looking at people's circumstances a little bit too much. Okay, these people have this kind of power. You're going to get exposed if you do this. These are the consequences. I think it's quite simple and quite straightforward. All people are equal. It doesn't matter at the end of the day how much money you have. If you're a hospital, that's the problem. You're the wrong person to be making that decisions. You shouldn't be making a decision on how am I going to increase my profit margin. You need to be making a decision on how can I best deliver on the Hippocratic Oath and taking care of people who are sick, who need the care. Once you make it a game about, a numbers game where, okay, these people are poor, therefore their life doesn't have the same amount of value because they don't have the same amount of money, I think you get into tricky territories, and that line of thinking is what's responsible for huge problems that we see in society, in civilization. I think that's basically what I wanted to talk about here, is because I see that pattern bringing itself up in the history of humanity. Like that type of thinking, Nick, is what pervades like the less developed countries. They have a problem because their government is corrupt, and because their government is corrupt, they don't have the type of laws that you were talking about, and so all the professionals are corrupt because they can deny, they can have monopolies over their services, and so it just pervades society, and no one can move up, and it really hinders people's ability to live a happy and healthy life, because they're gonna have someone knocking at their door saying, you have to give me $10 if you want your electricity to be turned on. You give them $10 and they're like, okay, I meant 15. You know what I mean? And you give them 15 and they're like, oh, well, it's gonna be on for a week and then I'm gonna come back and you have to pay me again. And there's nothing you can do about it because your government officials are corrupt, and when you try to elect new ones, they get shot and killed. And you have no power.
See,
and so what I wanted to do with this podcast, Nick, is because right now we're young, we want to be rich, we want to climb that ladder, but we don't want to be corrupted in the process. We have to be that change. You know what I mean? We have to be the right person making that decision. You know what? This is going to cost me some money. This is going to cost my hospital some money. But we should get the publicity that says we're doing the right thing no matter what. You know what I mean?
I see where you're going. However, I have to push back towards you Because here's the thing, the reason why people even do that or take the corrupt route is because they do it in the theory of self-interest. They're going to do what they do for themselves,
Right.
or what they know is going to be beneficial to them exclusively, or best case scenario, people that they highly respect, love, or related. And
Yeah.
even then, those are very questionable depending on the person. So in actuality, I guess you could say, a melding of the two that our little debate is being, best way to put this is basically, how can you have the right things of human nature but yet still work on self-interest? You're doing it in self-interest, but you need to be able to find a way that, even though you're doing it in a self-interested manner, you are not falling to corruption, and rather you're helping people outside. So basically,
I get what you're
you
saying.
need to be able to make more benefits than the consequences.
So what you're saying, Nick, and that's a good point, and I really want to touch on what you're saying, because there's this idea that only greedy people and corrupt people create value in society because of what you're saying, because they're willing to make the self-interested choices, which propels them to do the things that create value in society. What I would say, and what it is to me is more obvious, is that you do not have to be corrupt to create value. You just have to be ambitious, and you have to be hardworking, and you have to have integrity. If you're out there every day busting your butt, doing what you're supposed to do, what is required of you, and you're living an ethical, what's up, Christian? Yeah, we're recording right now, man. But yeah, so we're talking about corruption.
Was he back there?
Yeah, we're talking about corruption.
Is he gonna be here?
He's going to be
Not here, but he's gonna be at the meeting.
I remember you. We should do that one time.
Um,
Shoot again sometime.
Are you gonna be at the meeting?
Well, I got my YCT meeting right now, but I'll stop by after.
All right,
So
yeah,
we're doing 9:30, right?
Yeah, talking about finance and stuff.
I got you.
Okay, so so in order to create value in society, it's pretty simple. You just have to have good ideas. You have to be willing to work hard. You have to be willing to navigate social environments, and you have to be ambitious. And you can do all of those things without being corrupt. And you see that time and time again, where you have someone like a Bill Gates, or you have someone like an Elon Musk. Elon Musk creates values, and he's not doing it in a corrupt way, like not a straight boss tweed, or or those corrupt billionaires that we hear about. Yeah, Jay Gould. He does it simply off of, here's an idea that's going to benefit humanity, and I'm going to work my butt off to make that idea manifest itself and come into fruition. And then he creates value. So you don't need to do that to create value, Nick. And that's what people don't realize, is that, look, and that's the number one thing that I want to stress, is that you have to be just as ambitious. You can't just be a good person. That's not going to be enough, because then you're right. Because greedy people tend to be ambitious. But it's, why aren't the good people ambitious? Why aren't the good people out there,
I would put it like
doing
this.
what they need to do?
I would put it like this, because the good-natured people that I'm going to put in that category versus the corrupt ones, it's that the corrupt ones, basically all options are on the table in every regard. But for the good people, they're limited in the choices that they can make, or they can't think of ways to basically pull the carpet from under their opponents versus the corrupt ones. And also, here's the thing, good-natured people, I think we've already figured that out in life, and everyone else knows that they are extremely rare to find good people that are willing to do that effort and not take the corrupt route, because it's far easier to take the corrupt route. It's easier to make connections with those corrupt people so that you can get into a higher standard versus the good people, because good people, it's rare. So therefore, because it's rare, it's much harder to develop a group, because there's strength in numbers. But if you can't get that strength in numbers, you're a goner. That's why most people take that route.
And I would agree with you, and that's another common misconception that I think needs to be addressed, that there's this idea where if you're a corrupt person, all options are on the table for you.
They'll take
whereas if you're a good person, it's not. And I would push back on that and say that that's what happens when you're a corrupt person. You become like in Lion King, you're like Scar. You're not really truly strong. You don't really have the talent. You don't have the merit. You don't have the integrity. You don't have the skill. So therefore, you need to subvert. Therefore, you need to put people down, and you need to lie, and you need to deceive. If you're truly smart and you have the skill and you have the integrity and you have the will, you can accomplish what you need to accomplish, and you can do so by you can at the same time bring everyone else up. You can lift all boats, because you have an abundance mentality. And that's what you see someone like, because in your example, when all options are on the table and you're screwing people over, you have something like the 2008 financial crisis, or you have something where like the government, you have like New York corruption in politics, where the democracy doesn't even represent the people, it just represents the people who are self-interested and they want to keep the power with themselves. When you have someone who understands that, look, you can be a good person, but it's all about skill as well, you get like a George Washington, you get like a Theodore Roosevelt, who pound for pound, no one could beat them, even corrupt people, because their ideas were better, they were able to articulate themselves better, they had the true love of the people, and they like Theodore Roosevelt was working hard, and in George Washington's case, he was the perfect man for the job because he was rare. That's why he was so effective, was because you couldn't trust no one else. And that's the thing that you get when there's somebody that has the integrity, that has their head on right, that lives properly, and who's not corrupt. You know what's the one thing that you can do with that person? You can trust them with your life. And if you have someone that you can trust, you're willing to buy into what they want to do. You want to see them succeed. And I think that's a very powerful thing, especially in this day and age where public opinion is something that's super important. And it's a much harder route to do. I give you that, because you're not depending on subversion. You're depending on skill and merit, and you're depending on integrity. And those are very hard things to do, because like I believe, none of us are perfect, None of us are perfect. We're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to cut corners here and there. But Parker, how does somebody maintain that type of virtue, that type of commitment to good standards of behavior, and not succumb to like making the easy shortcut decisions? How does someone keep that, type of moral framework intact?
I think it also has to do with, I want to go back to the discussion saying like, you can be good and you can be successful and you can have a perfect route in doing it, but money also changes people. So once you contain millions of dollars, billions of dollars, it almost hypnotizes you to where you're like, this is life, this is a possession, I'll do anything to keep this. And therefore a lot of billionaires are looked at as scumbags because some of them have done corrupt things, and maybe they were good at one point, like maybe they were like you, me, Jordan, sitting down like talking about it, and then one day they made it and they're like, and that's my biggest fear with possessing my 26 million is I hope it doesn't change me, and I have no control of that, and I don't think any of us do.
That's what I wanted to do here, Parker, is like knowing that you're going to face those temptations. How do you inoculate yourself against becoming corrupt?
I also think, all like controversies aside, a good faith, like a religious faith, like I'm Christian, so like my faith in God would probably help me with something like that. A basic background morals that your parents taught you. I think just your heart and for your company, or what how you got that money, or how you got that amount of success. It's like if you're really passionate about pencils and you make like the next big mechanical pencil that all the high schools and colleges are buying, well then that should always be your focus, and not and helping. And then there's the side where you're like, oh, these pencils are not only teaching kids, they're learning how to read and write. So that should always be your focus, not okay, now I should sabotage people in my company. You were there for pencils in the first place. So I think just staying on track the whole time. There are a lot of humble billionaires. There are a lot of humble millionaires, but there's also not. So I think it's always up to you. It's up to you. And I think getting a lot of money though at the end, back to the money discussion, mixing it with corruption will define who you really are. So you get all this money and you go, and you'll be like, man, that whole time he was really like that because you just gave him all this power. Now what is he going to do with that power? Is he going to use it to help people? Can he treat himself? Of course he can. Can he treat himself and then sabotage people? Of course he can. So I think it's always up to you. I think it's always up to the individual.
So same question. So would you put it in the question of not necessarily what me and Jordan have been talking about, but rather you'd put it somewhere along the lines of how much ambition is too much versus how much restraint I should have?
I feel like
in connection.
I don't feel like there's such thing as too much ambition, as long as it doesn't hurt other people or impact your relationships in life. But sometimes they do.
Hence the restraint.
Yeah, like what you were saying about with the guy who had $50,000 and he couldn't give his mom $2,000. That is a risk, and that is like, it's kind of like, man, you didn't even help your mom, but he did what he needed to do. That's almost like too much ambition, but he still made it. So it worked for him. So it's like, I mean, if I'm not blasting that guy, but like if my mom called me with a financial problem, I'd be like, yeah, mom, of course I'm gonna help you, but then I'd be like, okay, and I have to think of another logic way, you know. But
I'd be trying to negotiate.
now the other thing is that comes in ties with corruption is is who can you trust?
Yes.
In terms of who can you trust in your life?
Inner
like
circle.
for me, my dad all the way, because my dad's really good at finances. He's very smart. He already does my taxes with me. We kind of bond that way. I would trust my dad immediately, or my older brothers. But like, is there friends out there that you wouldn't trust, or maybe even other family members? It's like, and that really sucks to like bring that into reality where you've made it and you're big, you're on top of the world, and it's like there are some people that I cannot trust, and I have to put my foot down. And that's why these successful people are very brutally honest, because they are saving their own ass.
Yeah. So
and they're not only saving their own ass, they're saving their company. They have a lot on the line.
I would add to that. And so in terms of because I think we're coming up on the end of it here, but for the last moments on this podcast, which I think we've done a very good job so far.
Yeah,
I can't wait to. Is give people out there concrete steps, because I think everyone when they're young, they want to be good. They want to go out there and change the world and help people. But along the way, like you said, Parker, they get influenced. And so what I want to do is help people to stay on the right track, because we need more people like that. And that's what really developed societies is that enough good people got in to create enough checks and balances to keep to keep as much corruption as they could from infiltrating the system. Now, obviously, no society is perfect in that regard. But the first thing there's the two things that I would say, and one is going to pick up off of what you said, and I think and I would extend it to finding people that you trust, but I would say you need to find an inner circle or friends that exhibit the type of behavior that you agree with. Because to me, I know in my life, whenever I've hung around people who are doing like bad things, that kind of seeps in, not immediately.
It's kind of like you are who you hang out with.
Yeah, you are who you hang out with, because you see it all the time, and you think it becomes normalized, and they hang out with people who do that all the time, and then so it's kind of like you get peer pressure, and like you're forced to do that, and no one likes the guy who doesn't want to do anything that everyone else is doing. You know, he's like because he's a goody two shoe, so you become an outcast if you want to stick up for yourself, which I mean you should still do, but I mean it's just not fun. But yeah, so the other thing, well, go ahead, Parker.
I was going to say, there are so many successful people out there. There's a billionaire, his name is Dan per something. He has a castle in Scotland. I just listened to his YouTube video. He ran a bunch of weddings. I'm sorry I don't have your last name, bro. I was watching his video, and he said something like, I could look at a crowd of people or an individual hanging out with a crowd of people and tell him to his face that he's not going to become successful, or he is, depending on who he's hanging out with.
Exactly.
Because you do need to surround yourself with better people, or people that you're inspired by.
Yeah.
If you draw, you need to be around some of the best painters and draw. Like if you cook, you should be learning from cook. Like you shouldn't be hanging your time like hanging out with bums behind a dumpster.
And you got to take it a step further. So I would say because it basically is what is going to influence you, right? So what is going to make you feel like, okay, this is acceptable behavior, this is good behavior to emulate, I should be living my life along these lines, not this line. This lifestyle is for me. I love it, I agree with it, I love living this way. And it's good. So like I would say, look, so you got your friends that you hang out with, and you want your friends to be living good lives as much as they possibly can, because no one's perfect. But friends that that you can trust, that tell you the truth. To me, that's the big thing that I look for anybody. If you're going to tell me the truth, then I can trust you right there, just off of that. Just because I know that if you're going to do me wrong, at least you're going to tell me, yeah, dude, I can't be there, or something like that. But the next thing I would say is other ways of influences. So it could be listening to podcasts of people who are sort of living a good life or the right life or doing things in a righteous way. Or, like you said, reading the Bible, that sort of influences you and sort of recalibrates you to that mode of thinking. Reading literature, reading about people who've actually done it, who had ambition, who were good people, like Theodore Roosevelt or,
Carnegie.
George Washington, Carnegie, people who did, people who've done things the right way. So it's just about finding these people and then setting them up as models and then doing your best to outdo them. You know, that's the kind of I like to outdo them. And so the last thing that I want to say before I pass it on to you, Nick, is this is, you know, it's going to be tough for me to say this, but this is something that I got from listening to Alex Jones. So don't turn off the show right now.
Infowars.
I'm going to bring this back. But I was watching an interview that he did on Louder with Crowder. You know, Louder with Crowder.
I think I've seen that one.
And he was talking about how these uber rich societies, the one percenters, the people who control the world governments, the corporate elite, you know, whatever you believe, there are families up there that have more power and influence than the regular people, and they do so through these networks.
Yep.
And in order to keep the network going, they have to constantly recruit up and coming people, you know, people who
the talented ones.
The talented individuals who on their own merits have acquired their wealth and power and status, not through like inheritance. And what they do is they put them through a series of trials where they corrupt them. So it's kind of like what we're talking about, but it's the opposite. So the first thing that they do is, I think Alex Jones says, you know, because in order to corrupt somebody, you can't corrupt their mind. You have to make them do corrupt things. It's like a psychology thing. If you do something that's corrupt, your body is automatically going to associate yourself with behaving. You know, that like behaving corrupt is okay. So that's what they try to make you do. So he said, like, one of the things that they make you do is they make you kill an animal that loves you, that is really loyal to you, and they make you kill it in front of its face. Like you take it to the park. You bring it home and you kill it right then and there. And I know this is some dark stuff. It's like we just turned super dark. Mm-hmm. But when you're talking about that level of corruption, this is kind of the things that they make you do. And he goes and says, you know, like it's like murder, like the biggest sins that are out there. Those are the things that they make you do. So they make you do an increasingly more potent sin the next time and the next time and the next time, so that the first one gets you in. And then the next one, you're like, well, I did that. And then by the time you're doing the third sin, it's like you've already racked up all these sins, and you really want what's at the end of that list, because as you do more sins, the more rewards you get, the more power you get, the more influence you get. And by the time you're at the end, you've done so many corrupt things that not only can they blackmail you and say, hey, look, we know you did all these things, you can never get out, but it changes how you view yourself, and you can never go back. I don't know if I should say never, but it's very difficult to go back.
I would say it's very, very